Welcome back to What Arty Noobs with General Disturbance. This is a Bretagne Panther. It's a tier 6 French premium medium tank. It's located on the north spawn of Steppes, and this one is under command of Red Dog Alpha 1. Now it's basically a BK3002M because technically it's got the same configuration as the Panther prototype. But in actuality, in the game, it's supposed to be a Panther Aslains A. But of course, it hasn't got the Aslains A's figures. So this is not a Panther like in the Tier 7 Panther, although technically that's what it's supposed to be. It's actually a BK3002M. And I can show that in comparisons if you will want to see it later. So you can actually get an idea for yourself of what it is. But yeah, it's treated as a Panther as such, or Panther prototype. It's got a 75mm high velocity gun, which is capable of doing 135 alpha, and with standard rounds it will penetrate 150mm of armor, and with the APCR it will go through 194mm. You can see it's got a very high velocity with the APCR, 1156. Standard reload is 4.03 seconds, and Red Dog Alpha 1's got 3.53, so he's reduced it a little. Sees his first target, which is a Skoda T24, pulls back into cover, getting auto aim on him. No, that one hit the rock. Okay, it's got kind of weird rescue here, where it's actually going to one side of the actual point he's aiming at. Alright, back to normal now. It's not a cheat, by the way, because if it was a cheat, then a cheat would be trying to lead the target to aim on the target as it anticipates the target's movement. Most cheat mods or aiming mods try to search for the weakest spot of the enemy target, and they try to anticipate movement. But he's not doing that. Well, only one tank has actually come down this way. Oh! He missed the opportunity there. He could have put a shot into the Skoda. In fact, he's got the front of the vehicle. Probably tracked the guy, but he won't do any damage as such. But there you go, he got the damage on spotting that one, so that's okay. It's not the best side of this rock to actually aim at, because there's a pretty good chance that the tanks are actually going to get into a position where you can actually shoot at them from the other side of the rock. Oh, again he misses the chance to get a shot on that Hellcat. And the enemy's very short-handed on this side of the map. They seem to be sending a lot of tanks up the other side. In fact, they seem to be sending heavy tanks up the other side of the map. And the only tanks over this side are, well, tier 6s. Whereas the other side of the map has got the better tanks. This is a tier 6 premium, this one, so it is a tier 6 game with tier 5 tanks in it. Get a shot on these guys? No. It seems there's too many tanks down this end of the map. It might be a good idea for Red Dog Alpha 1 to pull back and relocate to the other side of the map. Otherwise, yeah, his team is starting to fall apart on that side of the map. He needs to move. I'm not sure he actually realises the situation, but he has now. He's moving, but he's decided to cut straight across the field. Now this could be dangerous, because there are a couple of enemy tanks across the field, including that Hellcat and a Valiant. He's pushing straight ahead. So he's decided to almost cut the enemy off by going into their rear and getting behind the enemy vehicles. And the first tank that goes down is the enemy Hellcat, and he's now behind the enemy tanks, including their heavies. Oh, Mr. KV-1S? Yes, easily going to pen your rear, and he suddenly realised he's in danger. He got a fire, and there's a kill. So he got an arsonist off that one. That was a worthwhile one, but look, he's got that tank up ahead, which is a 720 M41. And remember, that thing's got a wicked gun, which can do quite a lot of damage. We don't have to worry about the Valiant anymore, he's gone. But this Semavente just took out our Leopard, so yeah, I think he's relying too much on the auto aim at the moment on this one, and he might need to think carefully. Yeah, that's better. He took a round up the rear, but that was actually from the Chatty, who's firing a 75mm gun at him, but it's a low velocity one, and he's actually firing HE now because I think he was having difficulty trying to get through the armour. He's going to give another go. How about a high velocity gun? Well, he actually got it in the rear from the Panzer 5, or no, it was actually the Churchill, I think, that got him. Yeah, it was the Churchill got him, the Churchill 7. Well, there's only 4 enemies left now, and they just lost another one up the upper end of the map. Doesn't necessarily mean the game's over, but that might be the case. We can see that there are 3 enemy tanks up the far end, a KV-1, a 40TP, and a VK-3001H. Only one of those is a tier 6, and that's the 40TP. Skirted around the cap there because he didn't want to give away his position, and we've suddenly spotted the enemy, and there's the 40TP, and he just got around into us. He's just brawling with him now, getting these rounds in. Now he does have 8 degrees of gun depression, but that 40TP is getting more than a few shots in, and he's firing on the move. Next one will be a kill. Yes, he got him. There's only 2 enemies left, but there's the VK. That one bounced off. Oh, and he's taking 75mm rounds, but the VK's gone down, which means now there's only 1 enemy left. It's a KV-1. Now, we don't know what gun he's got at all. No idea. But it looks like he's down our end of the map because our tanks are up the far end and they haven't found him. And yes, here he is. He's actually here. First shot doesn't pen. And he's also aiming onto these guys. I think he's got the bush mechanic working in his favour here at the moment. The KV-1 can't see him. And there's the kill shot that wins the game, and it actually goes to the T-78. So this game is over and it's a victory. Here's the end of battle stats, and that was the first class tanker to Red Dog Alpha 1 in the Baguette Panther, as we call it, rather than Bretagne Panther. It got the name Bretagne, by the way, because 2 Panthers were abandoned by the Germans in France after the Normandy landings, and they were captured by the French and fixed and put back into action, and they were given 2 names. Bretagne was one of them, and there's saying that one of them is named Auvergne, but it could also be known as Dauphine, so we don't know which was the specific name that it did have. But they were captured, and these Panthers were actually manufactured during 1943 to 1944. They were Ausführung A versions, and so they were put into action on our side, and they fought with the Free French. So, first class tanker for the Red Dog Alpha 1 in this one. He also got an arsonist because he set light to one of the enemy tanks. In fact, he set light to the KV-1S. He also got a fighter badge for getting at least 4 kills. He got 4 exactly. A duelist for taking down 2 tanks who damaged him. A fire effect for doing more damage than hit points for his own vehicle. And he got a steel wall in that one as well, as he blocked the most damage, received at least 11 hits during the game. 4,808 was the win 8, which is a reasonably good score. It's a Super Unicum score. Let's have a look at team score. Well, he actually did get the highest damage in the game, but he just didn't get the 20% necessary to get the high caliber. 1,736 hit points of damage went to Red Dog Alpha 1. Second highest damage went to the Churchill 7 with 1,702. And the third highest damage went to the enemy Churchill 7, who got 1,470. When it came to kills, he had the highest number of those with 4. 2 kills went to the Churchill 7, the T-78 and the Basotto. And 2 members of the enemy team also got 2 kills, the VK-3001H and their KV-1. And when it came to base XP, he's got that one as well. So he's got the top in all 3 columns. 1,070 went to Red Dog Alpha 1, 887 went to the Churchill 7, and 610 went to the T78. So he was the only player in the game who actually managed to get 1,000 base, or over 1,000 base. And I get the feeling that the reason he did win that, or do so well, was mainly because he seized the opportunity to go straight across the battle and attack the enemy in the rear, and that enabled him to get some decent hits and some decent kills straight off the mark. If he had done what I'd suggested, which was to return over to the other side of the map, he might have got at the enemy tanks like the KV-1 and the 40 TP a little earlier, but he probably wouldn't have ended up getting the kills that he did get in the end anyway. So yes, he made the right choice and ended up with the highest stats. So well done to him. 22 shots fired, 15 direct hits, 14 penetrations. The 75mm gun on the Panther is actually pretty good, especially when it's in the top gun, the top Panther, the Tier 7 Panther. 1,736 hit points of damage, all of it done at close range. 11 hits received from the enemy. Only 6 of them actually penetrated though, and 3 non-penetrations. And I have the feeling that the 3 non-pens were actually from tanks which had low velocity guns, and therefore they weren't able to get decent pens on him. The Chatty, for instance. So that's why I think he was lucky more than anything. 2 hits received by way of splash damage as well from tanks firing HE. That was the Chatty as well. When he gave up firing the armor piercing, realised that he was probably better off firing HE. 135 hit points of damage blocked by armor. 2 enemy vehicles spotted. 6 enemy vehicles damaged. 4 killed and 154 hit points of damage assistance or spotting assist. On a free-to-play account, he earned 32,663 credits, and after repair and ammunition resupply, took away 15,982 credits profit, 1,070 XP, base XP, times 2 for the first victory, 214 for being a premium vehicle, and 535 for personal reserves. Took away 2,889 experience points altogether. I'm not so sure it was a good idea of him to slug it out with that 40 TP face-to-face. He was losing a lot of hit points, and so it probably would have been better for him to try and use his gun depression a little and get behind cover so he could use that high velocity gun on the 40 TP, take him out as quickly as he could. So that required him really to turn to the left and move behind that ridge line, and then attack the 40 TP as he could create artificial gun depression. But in the end, actually, even though he did take damage, he still managed to get the better of the enemy tanks and took them out, and of course ended up with 4 kills. So well done to him. So let's have a look at the armor profile for the Panther. Okay, that's the right page. You can see straight away it is basically a standard VK3002M when it comes to the actual armor configuration. A very nicely angled front plate, which is synonymous with the T-34, because after all, those were the design cues that the Germans were actually taking to actually manufacture a tank with a very highly rated front plate. 80mm impact armor with the angling comes out at 108 or thereabouts. Lower plate 60mm, but angling comes out at 106. It's got a very thick gun mantlet, which you can see 110mm, and in actual fact on this model it's rounded. Now that's important because the British learned early on during the war that if you could actually put a round in on this rounded mantlet, it would actually bounce off the mantlet through the top armor of the tank where it's only 16mm. So you could actually get a tank kill by aiming for the mantlet and hoping that if you hit the lower part of the mantlet, the shell would go down into the tank and kill the crew and or damage the machinery. So it was a very crafty trick, but it's British tank gunners were actually trained to do that. They aimed very carefully indeed, and they managed to get shots which would then kill a Panther tank by bouncing shells off their mantlet. Believe me, that it is recorded that that's what they did. You can see there's a bit of plating here. It's only a bit of spaced armor over the actual tracks, but it comes out as 5mm, and that with the impacted armor actually gives it 75mm overall, whereas you can see here this little bit of angled armor, and it is angled, you can see that, actually gives 40mm impacted armor, but it's actually coming out at about 56. The size of the turret, 45mm, coming out about 46. The rear of the tank is angled, again, 40mm coming out at about 55. The engine deck is fairly light though, 16mm, and so it's only giving 18, so you can penetrate it with Arty. And the same for the top of the turret as well. So if you're landing a shell on top of one of these, very good chance of actually penning them, because they don't have good top armor, but they do have reasonably good armor elsewhere. And you might have difficulty penning one of these if you get the sides of it, if you're in an Arty, because of course you can see the amount of effective armor is enough to block quite a few of the Artys in the game, especially ones that are around about the same tier. Now, if we show the modules, oh, before we go to the modules, let's have a quick look at the live model. You can see a 75mm round would just go straight through the armor, no problem whatsoever. It's only when you angle the front plate do you actually block the shells, so to speak, whereas the rest of the time it's fairly porous. So angling does help, but it also exposes the side of the tank, and you don't really want the enemy shooting through the sides. Ideally, you want to angle as little as possible, about that much, so that the shell will either bounce off that side or give you the maximum angling or maximum effective armor on the front of the vehicle. But let's have a quick look at the modules, as I said we would. Now, you may notice something straight away. No module model for the baguette. But that's not a problem, because what we can do instead, if I use my keys correctly, is we'll go to the tank selector, and instead we'll look for, oh, that's the wrong one. We look for the VK3002M, and there we have it. And it's the same tank, yes. So basically, let's have a look at this one, and it will be exactly the same configuration as on the Poodle and also the baguette. So you've got the driver up front on the right hand side, the driver's mate on the left hand side with the machine gun, also got the radio, transmission in front of them. Yes, the transmission comes from the back going up to the front of the tank, as most German tanks do. We've got the gunner on the right hand side with the tank commander behind. You can see the cupola for that commander, and also the loader on the left hand side feeding the shells in. There's no ammo rack in the back of the turret, so there's nothing for you to aim at except these ammo racks here that extend along the side of the vehicle. So if you want to ammo rack this tank, you go through the sides, or on the left hand side it's slightly smaller, and that will actually get you an ammo rack. The engine, well, it's got 3 fuel tanks, not 2. There's the usual 2 sandwiching the engine at the back, but there's an additional fuel tank right at the very back of the tank. So if you aim high at the rear when you're firing in, you should get that tank. Other than that, you just shoot in through the sides and you should get the fuel tank anyway. And that's where all the modules are on the baguette. Now, I did say that I show you the comparison, and the easiest way to do that is to actually pull up the baguette and save that one first. Actually, it's easier if I do it through this way. So we add the tank first. Let's see, it's got the right one. We need the 6, and we need medium tanks. So we then pull up the baguette as the first one. Save that. We add the next one being, let's look down the list and see where we can find another of the tanks. There's the Poodle. We'll have that one. Then we add the next tank in the list. And we've got the Bretagne Panther. Well, that's slightly different. We don't see that one because it's a premium, so we'll ignore that one, I think. But what we will put in instead is the VK3002M, which is there, and we save that one. And lastly, just to make it interesting, we'll add the actual Tier 7 Panther, which is this one here. Okay, and add that, and add one more, which is the Panther M10, which is again basically just a premium Panther, but shaped to look like an M10 instead of the actual Panther that it really is. So we'll put those 2 in. Now we see the comparisons. You can see that the Baguette Panther, the Poodle, and the VK3002M all have exactly the same DPM. They have exactly the same caliber, and virtually everything else is the same. So that tells you that basically it's the same tank. The only difference really is in weight. The Baguette is slightly heavier than the other two. The Poodle is slightly heavier than the VK. So it's really just a weight thing when it comes down to it in the end. But all three of these tanks are the same, and they are all tier 6. The Panther is the tier 7. As you can see here, you've got better penetration on the tier 7 Panther. And the Panther M10, even though it's a premium, it's got some of the same stats as the tier 6 version. So it's a bit odd that this tier 7 premium is actually classed in the same statistics as the other three over here. You can also see it's exactly the same caliber gun, but what's changed is it's got a higher shell velocity, and that can obviously do more damage to the enemy. Something other interesting is the fact that the VK3002M has actually got a higher ammo capacity than the other three, or the other four, 95 shells, whereas the Baguette's only got 79, the Poodle 81. And you can also see that the VK3002M, the prototype Panther, also has a higher potential damage because it's got more shells. It's got the same rate of fire and the same alpha, but it's just got more potential because it's got more capacity of shells. And you can see again that the tier 7 Panther actually has a lower shell capacity than the Poodle and the VK3002M as well, which is odd, but that's again down to the fact that it has lesser capacity. It's only got 80 shells, whilst the Panther M10 82. There are some statistics which are slightly better. They're all to do with gun handling more than anything. And of course, armor and health, you get more hit points on the premium Panthers than you do, or the top Panther and the premium Panther. But these other ones down here, they're basically the prototype, the Aslains A version, as I was saying earlier. So what you're getting here is a first Panther, and the other ones are the top Panthers, the ones which have come through after all the work they've done to improve it. And there you have it. So that's the difference between the Panthers. There are 5 different Panthers in the game in this group, and of course we're looking at it and saying that this is the nicest one, the Panther tier 7 on the stats, but in actual fact the VK3002M is actually better than the others because it's got more shells, so obviously it's got more potential. It could stay in the game for longer. So really, if you ever see these ones, obviously you know that they've got lots of hit points, so it's going to take a little while to take these ones down. But if you want a tank that's decent, that's got good high velocity gun, and is capable of dealing a lot of damage to the enemy, go for the VK3002M. That's much more fun. Mind you, of course, we have to take into account that these are premium vehicles, so these ones you're actually getting more credits and more training, more XP from every game you play. So if you've got to take your choice here. If you're going for the premium vehicle at tier 7, you want the Panther M10 rather than the Panther. But if you're playing a tank and you want to train someone, you want the Baguette and the Poodle rather than the VK3002M. I hope that's not confusing, but it's always interesting comparing these tanks because basically they're the same, except these are the early versions and that's the later version. So I hope you enjoyed that battle, and well done to Red Dog Alpha 1 for picking up his first-class tanker. Won't be long before he's got an ace tanker, and of course for getting that steel wall. If you enjoyed that replay, please give this video a like, do subscribe to our channel, leave a little comment down below because it feeds the algorithm, and thank you for watching.